then did they give me the confidence that something was going to go forward. Now, the night I made that vote, I submit to you, I have family that farm in that valley, and they did not like this thing. I had fourth generation farm people that I was working with. My company's 75 years old. I took it over from my dad. To say that it was looked upon with favor just is a huge understatement. It was looked upon as one of the worst things that could happen. Unfortunately, because I negotiated this thing, I realized the ramifications for not. So I had to lay my personal beliefs aside, and I had to vote what was right. And with the assurance that the state had passed the Salton Sea restoration, plus the fact that they were contractually obligated for the mitigation of the transfer, I laid my personal beliefs aside. I laid friendships aside, and whether we agreed with my decision or whether we disagreed with my decision, I felt it was the right thing to do. And I can tell you unequivocally, there's not a person in this room, no one, if you look around, not one person, me, anyone, nor you, would be here if it weren't for me. One vote. And it impacted 35 million people in 7 states. It was gut-wrenching. I lost friends. I lost business. But it was in the best interest of the state and 6 other states that I do this. It was the right thing. So I will leave you with this. I knew if I voted yes on it, I was going to lose the election. I knew it. But it was the right thing to do. So I'll say this. I would rather lose an election for doing what was right than be reelected for doing what was wrong. And I paid the price. And how I got reelected again, I do not know. I am just proud to be here, and I'm proud to represent the people that do. Again, right is right and wrong is wrong, and there are consequences for being right, but if you're right, you take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kuhn. I spoke to you at the outset on linkages. I'd also like to speak about an important linkage in our valley. For most of these 12 years since the QSA was signed, IID and our own county of Imperial have been at loggerheads. We've been litigants. County is sued. Just recently, Imperial County and IID resolved that lawsuit. And we are full partners at the Salton Sea. You'll be hearing from them at length, but I want to call on the county's public health officer, Dr. Stephen Monday, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the Salton Sea.
Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow board members. Can you hear me now? Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow board members. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. As we've already noted, I am actually a medical doctor, and I am trained in 3 specialties: public health, environmental medicine, and medical toxicology. So I understand the science behind the health impacts of the environment and what those impacts are in the community. My role as the health officer for the County of Imperial is to protect and hopefully improve the health of the residents of my community. And every resident in that community is my patient. And I'm here because I'm gravely concerned for their health in the future as we try to continue to improve their health. I noticed that a few people mentioned this morning already that we know that asthma is a problem in the Imperial Valley. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. I'm sure you're probably also aware of the fact that one of the things that correlates with asthma is air pollution, and particular particulates. And there are now many, many, many studies that have been done that confirm that relationship. It is my belief as a physician who takes care of patients and as a medical scientist that the health of the Salton Sea is going to directly be correlated with the health of the residents of my community. So I think it isn't just the issue of the water and the recreation and the mitigation. I'm here because I'm concerned about the people, the residents of my community. We have the highest asthma rate in the state. As has already been mentioned, we have made some inroads, but unfortunately our improvements have been small. And my concern is that if we do not do something to impact the amount of sediment that would be increased by the shrinking of the Salton Sea, that the increase in air particulates will directly and adversely affect the health of the residents of our community. What's particularly troublesome to me is that children are even more adversely impacted than adults. It affects everyone, but children seem to be more susceptible. So I believe there is no doubt that with worsening air particulates, that our asthma rates will worsen. It isn't just asthma. There are many studies that have shown that in adults, for example, if they have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, emphysema as an example, that they also have worsening when air pollution worsens. Believe it or not, and I still don't necessarily understand why, but we have many studies that have shown that particulate air pollution affects heart disease rates. Again, I don't know why, but it's definitely been shown that that's the case, and it affects total death rates as well. So I'm here basically to represent the health of the community. And I think it's really important to understand that this does actually impact every single individual that lives in that community, because if we don't do something to solve this problem, the air pollution is going to increase and it is going to worsen the health of the residents of my community.
Thank you, Dr. Monday. I think that the big takeaway there is, you know, how do you balance economic and environmental considerations? Well, you do that all the time, right? I mean, that is at the core of what the Water Board does. I used to think that this petition, that the value in it was that it would finally force everybody to make difficult choices. But you don't have to choose between this water transfer and the public health in Imperial and Coachella Valleys. I mean, you balance those considerations all the time. You're going to hear from others that mitigation and restoration are fenced off from each other. You'll be told that the QSA is silent on restoration, that that's a state thing. It's statutory. Well, the people that Dr. Monday's talking about are going to be oblivious to that distinction. Right? There are people living, working, raising their families, and breathing the air in these two valleys. The QSA is not silent on restoration. The QSA, that, you know, sort of suite of agreements, I don't know which one it is, but one of them says that the QSA should be in, it's premised on the QSA legislation remaining in full force and effect. So it's central to the QSA. Our petition says that the QSA should be implemented in its entirety. So what's the missing piece? You're looking at it. And we're saying that by 2030, this is IID's estimate, we'll have 50,000 and change exposed acres. You'll hear from Mr. Cohen later today. It's twice that. So who's right? All we know is that there's a whole bunch we don't know. But we know that the Salton Sea is already going down. Josh? This is the Red Hill, or this will be the Red Hill Marina project. This area was covered in water 10 years ago. And if you're out there and you take a look at it, you'll see the picture doesn't do it justice because it's a broad swath of land. Now, the others are going to tell you that the impacts of the transfer have been completely mitigated one-to-one by this mitigation water. And maybe they're right. But after 2017, nobody has an answer. Nobody has a good answer. So, when you talk to the resource agency today, I hope that you'll ask them how many acres have been built out in the state's own state species habitat conservation plan. And I think that they'll tell you that none have. That's because we've mitigated a water transfer at a time of historic drought with water. And the water's been generated through land fallowing, not efficiency-based conservation measures that actually create an economic stimulus in our chronically underemployed valleys, through land fallowing. That 1998 IID San Diego water transfer, it expressly prohibited land fallowing. It was only with the realization that the Salton Sea had to be dealt with that we ended up with a deal almost exclusively built on fallowing for the first 15 years. So, next slide, please.
How many acres were fallowed?
In 2014, we fallowed 50,000 acres. This chart is supposed to show the intersection between salinity and elevation. You can see that that's spread there roughly between now and 2020, 2025. You've got basically a collision course. And you know what? It's important to note, we're not talking to you about water quality because that one's too tough even for us. We're simply saying the Salton Sea is going to be smaller. Even if it's a third less the size it is today, it'll still be the largest lake in California. That's how big it is. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the touching closing image. I'd like to return to the first overhead. So this is California again. You know, California, to my mind, people look to California to lead. California has this long, rich, progressive tradition. And it leads to enlightened policy. The environmental movement came from California. This RPS and the climate change legislation in AB 32, those are all California phenomena. Something like that needs to happen at the Salton Sea because it's not going to be the water transfers that are imperiled because IID keeps insisting on something happening. It's because if the Salton Sea isn't taken care of, you don't have to worry about our condition in the petition. The Salton Sea is entirely capable of collapsing this exquisite transfer agreement all on its own. In wrapping up, I'd just like to say to you that about a year ago, I spoke to the Southern California Association of Governments, and it was on Salton Sea, but it was specifically about a renewable energy and restoration initiative that we have with Imperial County. And I pointed out to those people, these are all the electeds in local government in Southern California, that when I was a student in Los Angeles, there were only 5 or 6 days a year that you could see the San Gabriel Mountains. Now, that was many years ago. It's not true today. The air in the Los Angeles basin is appreciably, measurably better.
Dr. Wallerstein is smiling now in the back of the room, no doubt.
So
Still a long way to go.
South Coast certainly had a hand in that. But so too did those elected people. So, I would leave you with this idea. Someone once said, it's certainly not original to me, that the moral test of government is how it treats those in the dawn of life, children. How it treats those in the twilight of life, the aged, and how it treats those in the shadows of life, the poor, the needy, and the powerless. Our valley doesn't have a lot of people. There's a lot of resources, not a lot of people. But California doesn't have to choose between the environment and the economy. You can do both, and I'd call on you to do it, and a good place to start would be to hold your next workshop at the Salton Sea. Thanks very much.
Thank you very, very much. I have a question. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Question?
If I could, I'd like to ask a question. Excuse me. We heard from the Senator Hueso and also from Assemblyman Garcia right at the beginning, who particularly the senator said he had stepped up to help pull people together, but what he found is that there was lots of people saying someone else should do this, or someone else should be responsible. And so clearly what he was asking of us was that we kind of need to not exactly start all over again, because we do know a lot more now than we did, and a lot more has been done than was done before. But is IID willing to do this stepping up and thinking about what more IID may have to contribute to the solution, in addition to all the other people taking responsibility? Is that an option that Mr. Coons or and the new chair will entertain?
Yeah, so Vice Chair Spivey Weber, that question obviously cuts both ways. We don't believe that more water post-2017 is the answer. As a matter of fact, we think that your board would have a tough time with that. We know that the other Colorado River contractors would. But IID is here. The whole purpose behind this petition is to no longer defer. So we are willing to participate in any reasonable solution, to find a consensus position. Every one of these QSA parties ought to be for IID's petition. Shame on all of us for having waited this long, including ID. So yeah, it'll take somebody making everybody come in a room, right? Your board's uniquely positioned to do that. It'll be awkward for you, but that's what we're asking you to do.
Madam Chair, and I certainly agree with Mr. Kelly. I just want to reiterate, we are here today because we would like the promises that were made in '03 to be honored. So when we're asked to do more, are we willing to do more to make this work? Yes, but the primary reason for us being here is to get those promises that were made in '03 for the state to step up to the plate and take care of those obligations. So again, yes, we're willing, but right now we'd like the state to live up to their responsibility. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Oh,
And
sure.
I know we don't want to take up too much time here with questions, but
Maybe looking at the clock too much, but.
yeah, well, just quickly, if you could go through the transfer and how you managed it as a district so that you had the least amount of impact. I understand your position against land fallowing. Did you have to fallow any ground? And if not, how did you manage to move forward with the transfer with the least amount of impact?
You mean going forward?
Since the transfer and going forward?
Well, because of that 2002 order, we've generated most of this water through land fallowing. So it wasn't just to provide mitigation water to the Salton Sea. You need, I think what you need to appreciate is that if you do efficiency-based conservation, you necessarily impact the Salton Sea, right? Because you're cutting off those agricultural return flows. You become more efficient, and you necessarily impact the Salton Sea. So IID for 12 years, arguably for the 5 or so years in the run-up to the signing of the deal, it's found itself between the devil and the Salton Sea. So your question, I guess the answer is IID would like to transition away from land fallowing, do efficiency-based measures on farm. Our transfer deal is based on subscription, where our water users volunteer to generate water, and then we validate it, and it's all accounted for at the river. That's the ideal. There'll probably always be some place in this transfer for fallowing, but it need not be the exclusive means of generating water. In fact, that is a suspect means of generating water in this terrible drought.
I think it's important to note, too, as a board, that we're committed to spending resources and have been in our budgeting cycle. This is a year where the transfer revenues exceeded our water sales revenues, but those are all being redirected into capital projects. From a system point of view, we're looking at canal linings, reservoirs, siting reservoirs. I think in the next 5 years, we're looking to spend well over $100 million. And Tina Shields, our water manager, is here, and she's specifically attuned to those numbers. But myself personally, as a farmer, I've been committed to installing drip systems, as have other people, pump back systems. There are limitations to that, and part of it has been through the litigation process. People are not willing to spend money, not knowing if the transfer is going to go forward. And I think that has been a big issue, and with the litigation lifted, people are willing to spend that money now, but it's still a process looking through ETOs and what the transpiration rates are and other issues related to crops and specific soil types, fields, gates, record keeping. The idea is a 100-year-old institution has a series of different levels of record keeping you can imagine, and every farmer has a unique system where he has one field or 50 fields off one gate. So it's really a matter of how do you keep those records, and looking forward to transfer that water through conservation has been the main means. And that's what we're committed to doing as a district. I think farmers are. You'll be hearing from the Farm Bureau today. They're committed to it. The veg growers, they're committed to it. And I think a lot of people are looking forward to the transfer going forward in the Imperial Valley. I know I am. I have 5 new drip systems with 5-year leases, and I have to pay those back. And if the transfers aren't there, then I'm going to have to figure out what to do with my drip systems. But from the IED's point of view, long term, we are committed to the water transfer as long as the other parties are committed to the restoration. And I don't see the IED committing more internal resources when we're focused solely on conserving water right now with those resources. If we have to go spend more money on the Salton Sea, I think that'd be really hard to sell locally, and that isn't the deal that we signed up for.
I'd just like to get a better idea about what's possible, setting aside the cost.
Sure.
Because I know that you can't be 100% efficient on all properties because it depends on the crop use and ET rates and all that. But it'd be helpful if you could provide some information on what's your current, how many acres are on highly efficient systems now, and what could the potential be, setting aside cost?
I think, Ms.
Diadamo.
Diadamo, you'll hear from panelists today, Mr. Cohen, who will tell you that even though IID won't be sending as much water to the Salton Sea, that the amount of water that's going to go there just off the farms and fields in that agricultural sump that it's always been is enough water to do great things with. That what the Salton Sea needs is projects, not necessarily just wholesale delivery of water. It needs projects that fit into a broader plan, right? Because otherwise this incremental approach is just chasing after the symptoms.
I know we're running behind, but
I mean, this is a key panel. Just mindful of the time since we have so many panelists, that's all.
you mentioned restoration, and I guess to the extent that we can be succinct, I notice in IID's letter that you are not advocating the restoration as defined in the 2007 preferred alternative released by the Resources Agency, which is returning to the conditions found in the 50s and the 60s. What is your definition or your proposal with respect to what restoration means? Is it the 700 to 750 acre feet per year in normal years? I mean, what is your definition of restoration?
I think that's a key concession that IID and others have already made, and that is the Salton Sea is going to be smaller. So there has got to be this overarching scheme that, for our part, is mainly about what to do with that exposed lake bed.
Right.
But I think you'll hear from others that we have an idea about how to address those air impacts, but it's not our place to posit it to you. The onus is on the state to select, fund, and build a restoration plan. So 12 years into it, we've just been generating water through fallowing, right? It's been a crutch. So the Salton Sea can always depend on some amount of water to for the future. But it's going to be smaller. We're conceding that. And we're saying that let's all talk about how best to approach the problem instead of continuing to punt, which is what we've been doing for 12 years.
Thank you for having us.
Let's move it. I think it'll, no, thank you for coming, all of you, and especially you. That was nice. I think we do, since we do this a lot, there's value in sitting back and just hearing from everyone and then coming back to it. Next panel from the County of Imperial, Ralph Cordova, Executive Officer, and Ryan Kelly, Chair of the Board of Supervisors. Morning. Yeah.
I did. Okay, here we go. We ready? Great. Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the board. I'm Ralph Cordova, the CEO for the County of Imperial. I and Mr. Ryan Kelly, sitting next to me here, Chairman of the Board of Supervisors, come before you today to speak to you on a matter of great importance to the County of Imperial, the Salton Sea. And we thank you for this opportunity today to speak. We're first going to discuss with you the importance of Imperial County, both economically and environmentally, to the state and the nation. We're then going to address how continued inaction at the
I'm sorry, could you
Salton
get
Sea-
closer to the microphone?
Yes,
Some
ma'am.
people in the back can't hear you.
Thanks.
We're then going to address how continued inaction at the Salton Sea will harm and we believe devastate our community with far-reaching impacts beyond the borders of our county. A quick look at the satellite image before you provide some sense of basic features of Imperial County. And I know Mr. Kelly has already gone over them. But if you look at it closely, the Colorado River is on the east, Riverside County and Coachella Valley are to the north, San Diego is to the west, with the Republic of Mexico to the south, punctuated in the middle with some of the nation's richest farmland and dominated by California's largest inland body of water, the Salton Sea. But really this is more than just a matter of great importance to me personally. I was born and raised in Imperial County. I'm a product of Imperial County. Along with my wife, a 9th grade health teacher, she was also born in Imperial County. We've raised our 4 children in the valley. Raised in the valley, I was fortunate enough to work in the fields. Growing up, I worked in cantaloupes, cauliflower, lettuce. Yes, fortunate, because it gave me a true sense of work ethic, and it also gave me respect and pride for our valley. So when I speak to you here today, I speak to you with a great sense of pride and passion for the valley. If we can go to the next one. The next slide is a slide of, is a picture of the signing settlement agreement with the IID. I would like to thank the IID for their initiative in bringing this matter forward to this board for your consideration, or some might say reconsideration. When the QSA agreements were approved over 12 years ago, the county had some serious concerns about how this water transfer would affect the county, both environmentally and economically, and in particular, what impacts would it have on the Salton Sea and our air quality. You'll hear a lot more about air quality later today, I'm sure. Those concerns, though, led us, the county, to file a lawsuit, which you're probably well aware of, challenging the QSA against the IID and others. We did that in hopes of ensuring that all of the environmental impacts would be properly addressed. As you're probably aware, and the slide shows, we have settled that litigation. And IID and the county and others are here standing together today in hopes of protecting the people of the County of Imperial, its environment, and its agricultural economy, that economy which feeds the nation. If we can go to the next slide, please. Our county's economy remains primarily agriculture. with approximately 550,000 acres of incredibly productive farmland, stretching from the Mexican border to the Salton Sea. That farmland helps employ, indirectly and directly, 2.5 million people here in the state of California. That economy, that ag economy yields over $2 billion for the county of Imperial, and it provides a wide variety of crops, including alfalfa, Sudan grass, just to name a few, as well as providing up to 2/3 of this nation, our nation's winter vegetables, including lettuce, cauliflower, carrots, and broccoli. In fact, I trust, and I can almost assure you that if you had a salad in the last week or so, the ingredients of that salad, they were grown in Imperial Valley. Imperial County is ranked 8th most productive agricultural region in our nation. Next slide. This slide is a picture of a geothermal plant. Imperial County possesses a unique diversity of natural resources, especially in renewable energy, including geothermal, solar, and wind. Imperial County is the largest geothermal power producing county in the nation, with a potential of producing 1,700 megawatts of undeveloped geothermal resource, enough to power 1.6 million homes. In this slide, you'll see a geothermal plant right next to some of our agricultural fields. That's a testament to the compatibility of geothermal and agriculture. By the way, the plume you see there, that is nothing but air-friendly steam. We today in Imperial County are generating and placing more than 3,000 megawatts of clean, green energy into the grid. Imperial County's green energy production is projected to increase over the next 15 years to 6,000 megawatts. Imperial County stands committed to helping our state meet its ambitious green energy objectives, and we, like all of California, are anticipating a substantial increase in the RPS. We're willing to do our part and more in helping to build a sustainable, clean, green energy future. If we can, the next slide. This is my favorite slide, I gotta be honest with you. As a matter of fact, Imperial County proudly hosts the Naval Air Facility El Centro. Because of our year-round flying weather, providing more than 360 days a year of what we call clear air, more than any other facility in the nation, it serves as the winter training home of our Navy's Blue Angels. And without these clear days, our local economy could lose up to $110 million. This is a perfect site. We're able to meet and talk with the pilots for the Blue Angels on a yearly basis. They love coming out to Imperial County. Next slide. The County of Imperial is an important part of the global economy. We not only share a common border, but we share a very strong culture and many economic ties with Mexico, especially the city of Mexicali, Baja California, which is the capital for Baja California. Mexicali is home to more than 1 million people. 3 land ports cross in Imperial County. And the Coachella Corridor, which runs through our county, serves as a major trade pathway, providing reliability to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. This is our Salton Sea slide with some beautiful birds out there. And as you've heard, the Salton Sea is one of the most important natural environmental resources in our state. That's an understatement in my opinion. It really is. I grew up in Imperial Valley, like I said earlier. I used to go out to the Salton Sea. It's an absolutely gorgeous place, and today it still is a gorgeous place. Over 400 species of birds can be found at the Salton Sea, which serves as a major resting place on the Pacific Flyway. The Salton Sea is also a host, and I'm not sure you know this, but I'm going to tell you anyways, that the Salton Sea is also the host to the 800-acre Sonny Bono Salton Sea National Wildlife Refuge, which includes threatened and endangered species. The value of this limited wetland resource to our environment is estimated to be over $2.6 billion annually. At this time, we'll go to the next slide, and I'll turn it over to Chairman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Cordova. Madam Chair, and board members, my name is Ryan Kelly. I'm the chairman of the Imperial County Board of Supervisors, and I represent the district that is the Salton Sea and of Imperial County. So unlike the IID, all of the Salton Sea within Imperial County is represented by me. Some of the communities that you may know or may not: Bombay Beach, Nyland, Calipatria, Brawley, Salton City, Vista Del Mar, just to name a few. So it is my task to share with you the dire forecast of what we would look. And so we present a picture of Owens Lake. And inaction at the Salton Sea can lead to conditions in Imperial County like this photo at Owens Lake. Exposed playa at Owens Lake caused the largest dust storms of fine salt and soil particles in the United States. Even with tremendous efforts to reduce the dust, Owens Lake is 138 times worse than the federally acceptable air quality standards. The Salton Sea is 3 times larger than Owens Lake. The destruction caused by inaction will likely be 3 times more devastating to our health, our economy, our agriculture, and our environment. The next slide. The human impact, our health system in Imperial County is already fragile. Struggling to survive in our community, Imperial County currently ranks among the lowest in California for measures that affect health, such as access to medical care. And if you weren't aware, 1/3 of our county residents are on Medi-Cal. Emissions from the exposed playa will significantly worsen the health of our residents that are already struggling with high rates of respiratory disease, asthma, lung cancer, bronchitis, lung cancer. Children and seniors will be disproportionately affected. And next slide. This is an aerial shot of the proximity of our ag fields to the sea. The impact on agriculture from inaction of the Salton Sea will be felt throughout the United States. As Mr. Cordova mentioned, we are a growing season that goes through the winter time, and we produce a lot of the produce crops that are on your salad bowl at least once a week, maybe. So some of those products include livestock, pasture crops, vegetables, citrus, and many seed crops that go out to be distributed across the nation and the world. As the salt level increases in the soil, it will be likely to be almost impossible to grow some of those crops because they will not, the salt won't be able to be leached from the fields. It's critical that that $2 billion agricultural industry in our valley is not lost and that it needs to be protected. And next slide. So we close with another picture from Owens. Another point that may be lost on some people, but certainly not to those of us that live in Imperial County. Demographically, we are one of the poorest counties in the state. Our population is over 84% Hispanic. The unemployment rate is traditionally over 23%, the highest in California and among the highest in the country and in the nation, across the nation. Imperial County's per capita income is $17,000 a year, which is among the lowest of any county in the state and less than half of the statewide per capita income. Imperial County has the highest child poverty rate of any county in California. 32.8% of Imperial County children live in poverty. Imperial County's air quality is among the worst in the state, as Dr. Monday had mentioned. It exceeds state and federal air quality standards for particulate matter pollution more than 200 days out of the year. A term that I hear used from time to time is the issue of environmental justice. The state of California cannot and must not allow the impending health and economic catastrophe at the Salton Sea to be visited upon one of the most vulnerable populations in the state and the country. I want to thank the State Water Resources Control Board, each of you,
for taking this topic, for convening this workshop, for giving us the opportunity to share the county's concerns and hope regarding this critical issue. And in closing, let me leave you with this message, and for those in the audience. The county supports the QSA. This is a noticeable change from a few months ago. And I would like to acknowledge in the audience IAD directors Jim Hanks and Matt Desert, and our fellow county supervisor Mike Kelly, no relation. It was that grouping that built trust and brought us to the point where we are now wanting to work within the contracts to address our concerns with air quality and environmental impacts. The people of Imperial County gave up a precious resource, water, during a time of need in 2002. And where I come from, your word is your bond. The state of California has failed to honor its bond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question?
What are the major, you mentioned several different kinds of crops that are raised, but what are the top crops for income for the county?
We do have a huge produce industry. It's less than it had been because of some of the packing moving out to Arizona. Mm-hmm. But we also have a large alfalfa, Bermuda grass, Sudan grass crops, and that's a huge export market for us as well.
Export to where?
Out of country, in country. Yeah, there's new pressing now that allows it to be shipped overseas. So it is part of the Coachella corridor to be shipped out of Long Beach and overseas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time today.
Giving me Owens flashbacks. I've worked on Owens and Salton Sea and a lot of these things.
Oh yes, and please do come visit. We will entertain you and show you all around.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Next, Supervisor John Benoit, Chair of the Salton Sea Authority.
Thank you very much, Chairman Marcus and members. I brought to the front of the room with me some of our staff from the Salton Sea Authority. I'm going to speak for the Salton Sea Authority, but I did want to introduce you. Roger Shintaku is our Executive Director of the Salton Sea Authority. I think some of you are familiar with his work for many years in water. Phil Rosentrader works for the Riverside County Economic Development Department, has been assigned to assist the Salton Sea Authority. Brian Nastandi, former member of the state legislature, formerly an aide in Washington, D.C. to Congressman Mary Bono, is now working for the County of Riverside, also working a lot on Salton Sea issues. And Mr. Brownlee at the end, who's with Tetra Tech, and they are doing a major study that I'll allude to here in just a minute, trying to resolve all of the issues into a comprehensive and study that will help us kind of decide the direction. So good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. And again, I'm John Benoit, Riverside County Supervisor. I have represented the area of the Salton Sea, close to it in some cases now directly, as a representative and elected official since 2002. I served in the State Assembly for 6 years. I served in the State Senate. I was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger to the Board of Supervisors of Riverside County in 2009. And in that capacity, I am currently the Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors. I'm also the President of the Salton Sea Authority. And I am proud to say, thanks to the comments earlier, a member of the South Coast Air Quality Management District and a few other boards. But it's here to talk about the Salton Sea in my home. I live in the Coachella Valley, about 30 miles north of the Salton Sea's north shore, where if you happen to be there this week, you'd be seeing some great tennis at the Indian Wells Tennis Gardens, 350 to 400,000 visitors are there this week to see it. In the next month, we will have the Coachella Festival. We'll have several hundreds of thousands there at Coachella for concerts. I'm not so much into that, but Stagecoach comes along a couple weeks later, and I like that one a lot. Our valley is heavily dependent on tourism. And if you see those pictures that were shown a minute ago and recognize that we are very, very close to that venue, and if that were to occur, what that would do to our economy is very, very difficult to conceive. And as we mentioned, I had a moment with the chairwoman earlier. The burp of 2 years ago showed just how far the effects of the Salton Sea can be felt as far as Simi Valley. Fortunately, that was not dust, but an odor. But it's important that we understand the potential consequences to the northern part of the sea. And I'm here representing Riverside County. We've heard eloquently from our border friends to the south. But the most important point I wanted to spend a couple minutes with you today is talking about the Salton Sea Authority. And what is it? The Salton Sea Authority is a joint powers authority formed in 1993 by local entities concerned with the Salton Sea and how we can address these issues. Several of the folks you saw here earlier are on that board. I'm pleased to say that board meets on a monthly basis. We have 2 members of the Imperial County Board of Supervisors, 2 members of the Riverside County Board of Supervisors, 2 members of the IID, and 2 members of the Coachella Valley Water District, as well as a couple members from our local tribe, and a tribe, the Torres Martinez tribe, that has a significant land holdings in and around the Salton Sea. My point today is to let you know that we exist. We are a viable agency. We are working hard together. We've had some differences. We'll have differences in the future, but we work through those. And if there's any potential that we're going to come up with a restoration, stabilization, mitigation plan that's going to work, the best potential is at the Salton Sea Authority, where the locals are there meeting on this on a regular basis. We certainly need the state's assistance. I am very, very pleased to have had the opportunity to meet with a good friend of mine who served 6 years in the State Assembly, Mr. John Laird. A couple of years ago, with the assistance of our Assemblyman Perez at that time, we've passed legislation that made a meaningful change in the relationship. We are working better today than ever with the State Resource Agency. We hope to have that same relationship with you. The State Resource Agency actually committed $2 million to the Tetra Tech study that is going on now to try and help us get a firm grip on what of the many different plans that have been proposed is the most likely to succeed. And I would submit to you that one that is likely to succeed has got to be one that can be funded primarily locally. We need help, but for the restoration side of it, for creating a workable lake bed, before you'd mitigate, I believe we're going to have to spend some local money and find local ways to do that. And that is part of what our Economic Development Department is working on, along with Tetra Tech and along with Mr. Nastandi. The leadership of the authority, working with partnerships of state and local agencies, is, I believe, the only way we're going to get to a successful conclusion. And its partners, the authority and its partners stand ready to work with you, with resources, with the federal resources agencies. We have had some historic breakthroughs. Last year, or 2 years ago, we had a meeting at the North Shore Yacht Club. This 1940s vintage building that the Riverside County EDA recently rebuilt was the site of a meeting where we had Assistant Secretary of Natural Resources from the Department of Interior, Ann Castle, there. We would invite you to have a meeting there. When Ms. Castle was there, we talked about developing an MOU that would allow us to work closely with the federal government. I'm proud to say that within a year, we had a signed MOU that included the Bureau of Reclamation, the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, who have all committed to working with the Salton Sea Authority closely and directly to try and pursue the best, most available options to do 2 things. One is to make sure that that sea is still available for the birds and the human population that have enjoyed it for 100+ years, and 2, to make sure that we mitigate any impact of what area we cannot keep underwater. We all have heard over the last couple hours, a couple of different times, that any plan probably means a smaller sea. And we recognize that. We will deal with that with your assistance. But whatever that means, it means some area of playa that has to be protected to keep that kind of a wind-borne incident from affecting the health of kids all the way to Simi Valley. The difference between what you saw in Mono Lake, and I love Mono Lake. I've vacationed in June Lake 20 years of my life. It's a beautiful place, partly because there are not a lot of people there. If that cloud were to leave the Imperial and Riverside County area and move through Riverside and into the Los Angeles area, as evidenced by the burp, you're not talking about a few 100,000 people that could be impacted, but 20+ millions of people that could be impacted. The AQMD, where I have the opportunity to serve, is hugely concerned, the Imperial County as well as South Coast, what those impacts could mean from a health safety perspective. So I'm here to urge that whatever steps we take collectively, that we work through the Salton Sea Authority, where I think there's the best possible hope for finding a solution where we're all at the table on a regular basis, on site, and I invite you to come and join us at that meeting, or anytime you can come down and visit with us in the area. With that, I will stop and then